Last summer, somewhere around early June, I had finally finished my exams and was back in my parents' place for a break before the next term started. I'm Sarah, and I live in New Jersey. During the break, I caught up with two of my closest friends from high school, David and Mike. We all go to different universities now, so getting together like we used to was pretty rare. One day, we decided to plan a small trip, a quick weekend by the water to hang out, relax, and catch up on life. David mentioned that his uncle owns a small cottage near the beach in New York. Not fancy or big, just a couple of rooms and a simple kitchen. The place isn't used often, so David asked if we could stay there. We didn't care about the size or luxury. Honestly, we just wanted a quiet spot away from campus and the city noise to chill for a couple of days. We drove there on a Friday afternoon. The air was heavy with summer humidity and smelled like salt and sunscreen the moment we got close to town. The temperature was warm, probably around 85 degrees, with that sticky feeling on your skin you get near the ocean on sunny days. The first day was just like any other summer day. We walked around the small town, poked around local shops, tried some snacks, and played a few rounds at the arcade. The beach nearby was crowded with families laying out towels, kids tossing frisbees, and lifeguards giving instructions from raised towers. It felt safe and typical, nothing out of the ordinary. The sound of laughter and ocean waves blended together perfectly. That evening, after the sun had mostly set, we headed back to the cottage. We grilled some hot dogs, played silly card games, and shared stories from our semesters. Around midnight, one of us, probably Mike, suggested we take a walk down to the beach again. There's something about the ocean at night that feels peaceful, almost calming. No crowds, no noise, just the water and maybe the stars. We grabbed a couple of sweatshirts, our phones, and a flashlight that David found lying on a shelf. Nothing fancy or planned, just a quiet stroll. We took a shortcut through some side streets that led to the boardwalk, then down the old wooden stairs to the sand. The beach was empty, except for the soft rush of waves. There was a faint glow from the few boardwalk lamps behind us and the moon hanging low behind some clouds. Walking close to the water, we let the cold waves wash over our feet. Mostly we joked and talked about random stuff – camp, friends, plans for summer, trying to keep the mood light and fun. Eventually, we stopped near one of those lifeguard stations you see parked on the sand during the day but empty now for the night. We sat down on the sand and looked up at the patchy sky. That's when David suddenly straightened up. "Hey, is someone over there by the water?" he whispered. At first, I couldn't see anything, just a dark shape near the shoreline. But after a moment, there it was, a figure, a silhouette moving slowly along where the waves met the sand, maybe 50 yards away. We assumed it was probably just a person, out late like us, maybe taking a walk or searching for something. But something felt off. Their steps were stiff, almost robotic. No natural swinging arms, no casual glances. Their head was tilted downward like they were staring intently at the ground or scanning the sand. It wasn't the relaxed, aimless walk you'd expect from a late-night beach stroll. We all went quiet, watching the figure without saying a word. The air suddenly felt heavier, colder almost. After a few minutes, the figure stopped moving altogether, now standing still roughly 30 yards away, facing us. That's when I started feeling uneasy. Mike whispered, "Why aren't they moving? Who just stands like that for this long?" David nodded and said, "I think they're watching you, Sarah." I didn't believe it at first. I told him, "No, I think they're probably looking at the sand." But David shook his head and reached for the flashlight. He clicked it on and pointed the beam toward the figure. For a brief second, the light hit the stranger. Their skin was pale, almost grayish, like they hadn't seen sunlight in a long time. They weren't wearing a shirt. Their clothes were soaking wet, heavy-looking pants clinging to their legs. Their arms just hung down loosely, motionless. The head was tilted at a strange angle, not broken but unnatural. And the eyes, their eyes were wide open, almost bulging, completely fixated on us. The moment the light hit them, something snapped. Without warning, the figure broke into a full sprint straight at us. It wasn't gradual. 1 second standing still, the next they exploded forward at full speed, almost like they were launching themselves. We screamed and ran without thinking. My heart pounded like crazy, legs burning as we scrambled up the stairs to the boardwalk, not stopping until we hit the street. I could hear heavy footsteps behind me and Mike shouting, "Run!" every now and then. When we finally dared to look back, the beach was empty again. No one chasing us, no footprints trailing behind, just the sound of waves and the night breeze. We stood there frozen under a streetlight trying to catch our breath and process what just happened. When we got back inside the cottage, we locked every door and window and pulled the shades tight. None of us could sleep that night. Every little noise made me jump, waiting for some kind of knock or movement by the window. Morning came and we tried to joke about it, maybe a prankster or someone drunk messing with us, but deep down none of us felt that was the truth. The way the figure moved, the strange silence, the lack of footprints, nothing about it added up. The second night, we refused to leave the house, sticking to inside until early morning. Then we packed up and left first thing the next day. For weeks afterwards, I tried to forget what happened, but then David texted me in the middle of the night saying he couldn't sleep. He kept having the same dream over and over. In the dream, he'd wake up and see that same figure standing silently in the corner of his room. Wet hair, pale skin, head tilted the same way, no movement, no words, just standing there, watching. I didn't tell him I was having the exact same dream. I kept waking up, convinced I heard dripping sounds and wet footsteps on the floor outside my bedroom door. But every time I checked, there was nothing. Then, almost a year after that night, I was scrolling through a local community page online. Someone posted a blurry photo taken from the beach just before dawn. The caption said, "Does anyone know who this guy is standing by the water at 1 a.m.? Creepy as hell." Even though the photo was dark and grainy, I could tell right away. Same posture, same pale skin, same dripping wet pants. The comments were full of people saying they'd seen the figure too. Some said the figure stood there for hours, unmoving. One comment even said they watched them walk into the ocean but never come back out. Another person mentioned finding wet footprints on their back porch a couple streets away from the beach, footprints that ended suddenly with no sign of where they went. I don't know what we saw that night or what anyone else saw, but I do know one thing. I'm not going back to that beach after dark. It still haunts me. The way those eyes stared me down and the way the figure seemed almost not quite human.
Each summer, my friends and I have this tradition. We pick a new place to go camping for a weekend. It's nothing fancy, just hiking, sleeping under the stars, and escaping the noise of everyday life. Last year, the three of us, me, Ethan, and Chris, headed out to a trail near Pine Ridge Forest here in Oregon. Chris is a bit of a nature photography enthusiast, so he always carries his camera gear hoping to capture some great shots of the wilderness. Our first day was pretty relaxed. We spent the morning walking through tall trees and mossy paths. The forest was alive with birdsong and the smell of pine needles. Chris was constantly stopping to snap pictures, everything from wildflowers to insects to the way the sunlight filtered through the leaves. Ethan and I weren't photographers, but we loved walking along with him, checking out the sights and joking around. It was nice to feel like kids again. By afternoon, we found a small clearing and set up camp near a small stream. Chris and Ethan pitched a tent together, and I took the other one a little off to the side. We built a fire, cooked a simple meal, and passed around stories about school and work. Nothing unusual, just the usual catch-up stuff friends do. Once the sun dipped below the trees, the sky turned dark, and we crawled into our tents. That first night was peaceful and quiet, except for the occasional owl hoot and the gentle rush of water nearby. I fell asleep easily. The next day went by much the same. We fished in the creek, explored a bit more, and roasted marshmallows over the fire in the evening. When darkness returned, we put out the campfire and retired to our tents. Nothing strange happened that night, at least nothing we noticed at first. Then, not long after I had settled inside my sleeping bag, I heard a faint sound coming from the woods around our camp. At first, it was just barely there, like the wind shifting leaves or a distant bird making a call. But after a moment, it turned into a voice, a soft, slow voice calling out, "Hello, hello, hello," over and over. The voice wasn't right. It sounded like an older woman trying to get someone's attention, but it was distant at first, barely louder than a whisper. Every time she said it, the voice grew a little louder and closer. I wasn't the only one who heard it. I called out to Ethan and Chris, asking if they could hear the strange voice too. Through the thin walls of their tent came a quiet, "Yeah, we hear it." The calls got clearer and closer, coming from just beyond the tree line near our tents. That's when I started to feel a knot tighten in my stomach. "Hello," the voice said again, but this time right outside my tent, almost like someone was standing just on the other side of the fabric. I froze. My heart was pounding. Then came footsteps. It sounded like someone walking slowly, dragging their feet just outside my tent. I called out, voice shaking, "Who's there? What do you want?" No answer. But then the voice said, "Hello," again, only now it didn't sound like a woman anymore. The tone was higher pitched but forced, like a man trying to sound like a woman. Suddenly, my tent shook hard, like someone was grabbing it and shaking it roughly. I screamed and yelled back, "Go away!" At the same time, Chris shouted from his tent, telling whoever it was to leave us alone. All at once, the shaking stopped, and we heard footsteps rushing off into the forest. The sounds faded quickly. I stayed frozen for a moment, heart still racing. After what felt like forever, I unzipped my tent, grabbed my sleeping bag, and hurried over to join Chris and Ethan. Every step I took felt like it could be the moment someone reached out and grabbed me. Once I was inside their tent, safe with my friends, we all just sat there, shaken and silent. None of us knew what to think or say. We agreed the voice didn't sound real, definitely not a woman in trouble. It was someone pretending, trying to trick us maybe. We didn't want to stay outside anymore, so we decided to wait out the night in the tents and leave as soon as the sun came up. We also agreed that one of us should stay awake at all times, just in case whoever had been outside came back. Chris took the first shift, sitting quietly while Ethan and I tried to get some sleep. But it was impossible to relax after what happened. Every small noise made me jump. I kept thinking I heard footsteps circling the tents, but each time I whispered for Ethan to listen, there was nothing there. Eventually, exhaustion took over and I fell asleep. When I woke, the sun was shining through the branches. Ethan was already up and Chris was just pulling down his tent. We packed up as quickly as we could and went back to our truck, ready to leave the forest behind. During the long drive home, Chris started scrolling through his camera. He showed us pictures from our hiking and goofy selfies we had taken while walking. But then his expression changed when he got to the last few pictures. He said, "Wait, when did I take these?" showing us 2 photos of our campsite taken while it was still dark. The pictures were blurry, as if from a shaky hand, but you could clearly see the tents in the fire pit, all quiet and empty. The very last photo made my blood run cold. It was a picture taken from inside one of the tents, our tent. The three of us were in it, all of us, asleep, curled up on sleeping bags. None of us had any idea when or how the photo was taken. Nobody was near us. Nothing had been stolen. None of us had been hurt. No sign that anyone had broken in. But whoever took that photo got close enough to be inside our circle of trust without us noticing. Someone had been close enough to watch us while we slept. And that realization hit me harder than the scary voice or the shaken tent. That creep, whoever they were, had been stalking us in the woods, waiting for just the right moment to show up and scare us, or maybe worse. Why they snapped that picture? I'll never know. Maybe to mess with us, or maybe to warn us. What I do know is that that experience changed how close I stay to others when camping. Now, even the smallest noise in the forest makes my skin crawl. The woods don't feel as free or peaceful anymore.
Summertime has always been my favorite season to get outside and enjoy the fresh air. My family and I have this place in rural western Pennsylvania where we spend a lot of time outdoors. It's a big property, around 2 acres full of thick woods, dirt bike trails, a small shooting range, and lots of space to explore. Every summer, I try to make the most of it, especially by riding my mountain bike through the winding forest paths that run right behind our house. One warm afternoon, the sky was covered with heavy gray clouds that looked stormy but had this strange yellow glow peeking through. The air was thick, filled with that familiar smell you get right before it rains. I checked the forecast before I left and saw that a storm was definitely on the way, but it wasn't supposed to start until later. I decided to take advantage of the time I had, even if it meant getting caught in some rain. The thrill of moving fast through the woods, feeling the wind on my face, was worth it no matter what. I grabbed my bike, locked the door behind me, and took off down the trail. The first part was a tough climb uphill, which always leaves me breathless but feels like a challenge I enjoy. The way back down is mostly downhill, which means I get to coast home without much effort. That's the perfect balance. When I got to the top of the hill, there's a small clearing surrounded by tall trees. I stop there every time to take a breather and catch my breath before heading back. Pulling out my phone, I flipped through my messages while leaning against a tree. Then something strange happened. The heavy gusts of wind that had been rattling through the branches stopped all at once. The forest fell dead silent. It was an eerie silence you don't usually hear outside of a horror movie. No rustling leaves, no birds chirping, no creaking branches. Just still, quiet air. I looked up at the darkening sky and felt a chill run down my spine. For a moment, everything else seemed to disappear except the silence around me. Then I thought I heard something else. It was a very soft, high-pitched sound that didn't quite belong to the forest. A voice, maybe, or something imitating a voice. Hoping I was just hearing things, I listened closely. The sound came again, a sharp, thin call, almost like someone was whispering right behind the trees. I hoped it was an animal, or maybe some wind moving through the branches in a strange way. But my gut told me this was something different. Then I heard broken twigs snapping nearby, maybe just 30 or 40 feet from where I was standing. I quickly turned to look into the dense trees beyond the clearing. That's when I saw it, a shape crouched down low among the shadows of the trees. At first, I wasn't sure what it was. It wasn't a deer or any animal I recognized. It looked like a person, but hunched over and moving quietly, trying to stay hidden. I got the unsettling feeling that whoever or whatever it was watching me, waiting silently, like I was prey. Before I could react more, the sky opened up and rain started pouring heavily. The steady drip of raindrops hitting the leaves filled the silence that had just surrounded me. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled somewhere far off, crashing through the forest canopy. My heart was pounding, and without thinking, I jumped on my bike and pedaled as fast as I could. The downhill rush helped me speed through the muddy trail, but I was terrified to glance back, worried that the figure might be following me. The rain soaked my clothes and blurred my vision, but I didn't slow down. When I finally reached the safety of my yard, I pushed my bike into the shed, locked the door, and hurried inside. I was shaking, out of breath, and kind of dazed by the experience. I didn't tell anyone what I saw or heard that afternoon. It felt like a secret too strange to explain, and I wasn't sure anyone would believe me. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the image of that hunched figure in the dark woods. When I finally drifted off, I dreamed about the trail again. Only this time, the figure was floating closer, its face pale and eyes empty, like something not quite human. It came toward me silently, moving as if it didn't belong to this world. I woke up suddenly, heart racing, soaked with sweat from the nightmare. The house was quiet, but my nerves were on edge. Every crack or creak outside made me jump, and I stared at the window, half expecting to see that shadowy shape waiting there. The storm had passed by morning, leaving behind cool, fresh air and wet leaves glistening in the sunlight. But the feeling that clung to me after was hard to shake. It was the kind of fear that settles deep under your skin, the kind you don't expect after a peaceful summer day. Since then, I still go biking on the trails, but I'm more cautious now. Whenever I approach that clearing, I pedal faster and keep alert, scanning the edges of the woods for any movement. If I'm alone, I try to stick to the path without stopping. I wonder who or what was out there that day. Was it someone watching the trail? Or was it something else, something darker hidden in the forest? I don't have answers, but every time I ride through those woods, I can't help but think that the summer afternoon I once loved holds secrets I'm better off not knowing.